Hello everyone and welcome to your E2 Task of the Week for IELTS. My name is Alex and I'm one of the expert teachers here at e2language.com. Today we are going to be looking at IELTS Writing Task 1, Mixed Charts. So as you know, in this part of the test you might have a line graph, a pie chart, a process, a table, and sometimes you have a combination, and that's what we're going to look at today. Firstly, we'll analyse an academic task 1. Then I'm going to write 3/4 of the task, and at the end I'll show you where to find the complete answer. Let's get started with academic task 1. So you're always going to get these same instructions. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task, summarise the information by selecting and reporting the main features, and make comparisons where relevant. Write at least 150 words. Now, this part of the test is worth 1/3 of your total writing score. So you shouldn't spend more than 20 minutes on it because you need that time in your task 2. So let's have a look at the rubric. The pie chart shows the percentage of carbon dioxide, CO2, emitted by the 6 biggest polluters in 2015. While the bar graph shows the top 6 emitters per capita in the same year. Sounds a little bit complicated, doesn't it? Sometimes in our live classes, we like to predict the information that we're going to see in the chart. Of course, you don't do this on test day, but it's a really good way when preparing because it helps you to see the bigger picture. There's a danger in academic task 1 of getting fixated in the details or lost in the details. You have to show the examiner that you can see the bigger picture. So let's do this together. First of all, let's think about the 6 biggest polluters. I'm Australian and I know that my country produces a lot of carbon dioxide. We mine for coal and we burn coal to create electricity. So I reckon that Australia is probably one of the 6 biggest polluters. What do you think about your country? Do you think you're going to be in the top 6? So let's have a look at the graphs, and I've removed the country names here so that we can really focus on the important features. Let's start with the pie chart on the left. This is showing us the global carbon dioxide emissions in 2015, and it's in percentage. We can see the rest of the world produced 34% of the global amount. Here, this is one country, and it produced almost the same amount as this, probably dozens and dozens of countries. Which country do you think it was? Could it be Australia or could it be your country? Another country down here also produced a very large proportion. Turning to the bar chart, now we're not looking at percentages here. We're looking at CO2 emissions per person in metric tonnes. That's why this goes up to 18 metric tonnes. And we're actually going to see the country's name. So this represents how much carbon dioxide the average person in that country generated in 2015. And we can see that 4 of the countries generated a very similar amount here. Do you think these countries were the same as these countries? Do you think this could be Australia or it could be your country? Well, let's have a look. And here is the full task. Now we can see that this country, which emitted 31% of the global emissions in 2015, was China, and the USA was second. So China produced the most, USA the second, and then the other big polluters were India, Russia, Japan, and Germany. In terms of emissions per person, however, Saudi Arabia was number 1. And this is interesting because Saudi Arabia was not among the highest emitters in the pie chart. We've also got Russia and the USA over here, which were in the pie chart. But Australia, Saudi Arabia, Canada, and Korea, South Korea, emitted a lot per person, but maybe not enough to put them in the top 6 of the global emissions. Now, of course, there are probably lots of reasons for that, lots of reasons why those countries emitted a lot. However, in task 1, we don't need to get into that kind of speculation. So we don't need to explain, we just need to describe. And we do that in 3 basic ways. This is how we structure the task one. We have an introduction where we reword the summary. Then we have a little paragraph for our overview where we describe the main trends, stages, or differences. And key features. So we present and highlight the important features here, and we use data like numbers or percentages. So in today's task, I'm going to write a key features paragraph for each of the graphs. Now, I should mention that there are a lot of different ways to put together your academic task one. At E2, we always follow the same structure because it just eliminates the decisions that you have to make on test day. You don't need to reinvent the wheel when you're writing an academic task one, but of course there's a lot of information out there. It's easy to get overwhelmed. Just keep in mind that the examiners are marking your work according to criteria. There are some things that you have to do. For example, you have to give a clear overview and you have to include data. Besides that, in terms of the structure, there is some flexibility. It's up to you. Of course, we recommend following our structure because it's so simple. So let me show you how this task is going to go. I'm going to write the introduction first. And basically, that just involves rewriting the rubric up the top here in red. Now, it's a pretty complicated rubric and a fairly complicated pair of graphs. I'm going to write a really simple introduction for this one because the rest of my task will be quite complicated. Here we go, the two charts. Compare data about the biggest carbon dioxide producers by country and per person in 2015. Super simple. Now I'm on to the overview. In the overview, I just want to point out some of the main features, the key features. I don't want to mention any specific data or details here. So I'm looking first at the pie chart, the global emissions in 2015. And very clear to see that China and the USA produced almost half of the world's emissions. So this is definitely a significant feature. On the other side, Saudi Arabia produced the most per person. So I'm going to put this into one sentence. Overall, it is clear that although China and the USA generated almost half the world's emissions in that year, the highest polluters on an individual level were Saudi Arabians. I also want to mention here the fact that although China and India were big polluters, they actually were not accounted for in the individual basis or on the bar chart. So interestingly, despite being in the top 3 emitters globally, the developing nations of China and India were not among the highest CO2 producers on a per person basis. So in those two sentences, I've covered the key features here, and you'll notice that there's no numbers, no percentages. However, I've shown the examiner that I get it, I can see the significant features here. Perhaps in your overview, you would include something different. And as I said, that's fine. Everybody's task one will be a little bit different as long as you have an overview. I'm going to write 2 little paragraphs here, one dealing with each graph. We've already mentioned how the graphs relate to each other in the overview, so it's fine to separate them here. And also, the first graph is talking about percentage and the second graph is talking about metric tons, so it would be difficult to talk about them in the same paragraph. Here we go. According to the pie chart, 31% of the global CO2 emissions came from China in 2015, followed by 17% produced by the USA. India, Russia, Japan and Germany accounted for approximately 1/5, and the rest of the carbon dioxide came from all the other nations of the world. And that's it for the pie chart. I've got some data in there, 31%, 17%. I've given a fraction, 1/5. So there's no need to mention every single piece of data, but you do need some data. The final paragraph is going to deal with the bar chart. This is how I would begin that paragraph. In terms of the emissions per person, but rather than finish it off, I'd like to offer you the challenge. Can you write the rest of this task one in the comment section below? Use this sentence starter and finish it off. Remember to include data in your description. Of course, if you want to see my full sample, you can find it on our blog, blog.e2language.com, and you can download it there. So this is the 3/4 of the task 1 that we've written today. Have a go at finishing it off and see if you can comment on other people's and help them as well. Come along to our live classes and you can write along with me and some of our other IELTS experts. You can find us at e2language.com. You can also find a huge IELTS preparation course there. You can submit your speaking and writing for feedback, book a one-on-one tutorial, come to the live classes or catch up with our recorded classes. Well, that's it from me. I hope that was helpful. I'll see you next time on our E2 Task of the Week. Bye.